Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to MarketStream.live. We're going to talk about everything that's happened overnight in Asia this wonderful Tuesday morning, 21st of March. My name is Joseph Cusick with the Cusick Groups, securities offered by MoneyBlock. Got a couple emails overnight basically talking about the model portfolios that I've discussed in the past. For example, I've talked about having exposure to these markets: Asia, Japan, China, India, Hong Kong, Europe, which we're going to talk about at 8:45 Eastern Time. So how does that model portfolio look? And here's an example of a model portfolio that you can put together. Now, there's a couple things that I want to point out here. The risk rating, 87. This basically means this is an aggressive portfolio. That's why when you look at your portfolio, you have to understand, how does this risk number fit with your risk tolerance? If you have a risk tolerance of 50, then having 87 exposure into your account and into your portfolio, that may not feel comfortable. So you have to rationalize why you're putting that exposure in. What are your goals? What are your objectives? Now, we're getting into a little bit of financial planning this morning, but I wanted to point this out only because this will give you a 95% probability over the next 6 months of your upside downside profit range or loss range. Okay, and with a 95% probability, with using the ETFs that we've discussed, like FXI, EWQ, EWU, EWH, EWJ for Japan, Hong Kong, China. These are the Germany. These are the underlyings that you use. We just used a breakdown of, basically just how much exposure you want to have to each one of these segments. And it'll give you a risk-reward analysis or probability within 95% of what's worst-case scenario right now being modeled for downside and best-case scenario being modeled for upside. Now, the probability of these actually occurring, being down 22% with this portfolio or being up 34%, is less than 5%. But you can look at the potential average return of this portfolio is 12.5%. The annual dividend is 2.56%. Your expense ratio is 0.56%. And then you can look at the risk reward. Look at where the most risk, but also the most reward comes into play with each one of these. And you can do a stress test. This is a stress test that will basically mark you out against some of the biggest milestones or movements in the markets. So for this foreign portfolio that we put together, like the bull market in 2013, the S&Ps were up 32%. This portfolio was up 38.6%. In the bear market of 2008, the S&Ps were down 38%. This was down 45%. So you can see that it's very sensitive to the downside. The financial crash, if the crisis were to happen again, this portfolio would be down 64%. And that was against what will be modeled against the S&P 500 from 2000 to 2009, which was the financial crisis, 53% if it happened again. And you look at it, what happens if the interest rate markets do go up 134 basis points? That's 1.34%. A fixed income or aggregate bond index would be down about 5.5%. There's a lot of price risk there. This portfolio would be up 4.2% in a rising interest rate environment, which we are in right now. Okay, folks, now let's take a look at the markets. Now that and if you want to learn more, go to premium content. You're going to be able to go in and take one of those surveys to get your risk number, and you can talk to me more about putting together and consulting on putting together potential portfolios for you. All right, now taking a look at the Nikkei. The Nikkei stayed in a pretty decent range last night. It did finish, off of its worst levels. Really, the most notable pressure was due to the fact that the yen strength continued overnight until we got the dollar popping. As a matter of fact, if you look at the dollar-yen pair right now, trading at 112.60, it has bounced off of its worst levels. We'll keep an eye on that dollar strength all day, but you can see that dollar move to the upside has added some weakness to the yen. That took some of the pressure off the market, but the yen strength early in the session kept the yen down for most of the overnight session, and it was down 65 points at 0.34%. Taking a look at the Shanghai Composite, was up about a little over 0.3% at 32.61. The Chinese markets continue to stay hot. What was notable about last night's action in both Shanghai and we'll touch on Hong Kong, but notable in Shanghai, in the Shanghai Composite, was the fact that the People's Bank of China did inject about 80 billion yuan into the markets. That's the biggest injection that we've seen in quite a few weeks. So they're continuing to support that market and plug capital in there. Taking a look at the Hang Seng, did finish up off of its lowest levels and off of its highs, basically mid-range, up about a little over 0.3, almost 0.4% at 24,593.10. What's notable here is property names continue to uptick. The property markets and the property prices have been going up on both the mainland and in Hong Kong. We did see last week that they did surprise and raise short-term rates in China. So really seeing markets, especially on the property side, that are moving to the upside. And that is very notable. Want to see if that continues, because that means that there's not only a healthy housing and property market, but there's also seeming to be a healthy consumer that's able to take on the credit risk and seems to be credit worthy to be purchasing these properties. So we'll keep an eye on that very closely. All right, folks, that is it right now for the overnight action report here at MarketStream.live. Join me at 8:45 Eastern Time. We'll be talking about everything that's happening in Europe. See you then.